The text message glowed on my screen at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. "It's just money, Ellie. We'll figure it out." That's how Tom explained emptying our joint account. $47,000 we'd spent 3 years saving for our kitchen renovation. I stared at my phone in the parking lot of Anderson Design Group, where I'd worked as a senior designer for the past 7 years. Rain pattered against my windshield, the Seattle sky a blanket of gray matching the hollowness spreading through my chest. I called him immediately. "What do you mean it's just money, Tom? That was our renovation fund." I know. But this investment opportunity came up through Greg." "Greg? Your poker buddy Greg?" My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. "The same Greg who convinced you to put money into that food truck that never materialized? This is different, Ellie. It's cryptocurrency. The returns are guaranteed." I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel. "Nothing is guaranteed, Tom. We talked about this. We agreed that any financial decisions over $500 would be discussed together. You wouldn't have understood. This is time-sensitive stuff. 7 years together, and he still spoke to me like I was financially illiterate, despite the fact that I managed our household budget, paid our mortgage on time, and had been the one to suggest the savings plan for the renovation in the first place. "I'm coming home. We need to talk about this in person." I ended the call and sat there, raindrops racing down my windshield, my mind racing faster. Our 1920s craftsman in Ballard had good bones but a dysfunctional kitchen. Cracked tiles, cabinets that wouldn't close properly, and appliances from the early 2000s that wheezed through each use. The renovation wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about creating a space where we could build our future. We'd talked about starting a family soon. Now that future felt as unstable as the wobbly kitchen island we'd planned to replace. When I got home, Tom was sitting at our dining table, laptop open, charts of cryptocurrency trends displayed like evidence in his defense. His dark hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. Something he did when stressed. "Look," he started, pointing at a sharp upward trend. "In 3 months, we could double our investment, maybe triple it. And if it crashes, it won't. Greg says." I don't care what Greg says. I rarely raised my voice, but 3 years of careful saving dissolved in an afternoon of impulsive decision-making had pushed me beyond patience. "This was our future, Tom, our home. Did you even think about what this meant to me?" "To us," he corrected. And yes, I did. I'm thinking long-term, bigger picture, without consulting me, without respecting my opinion or my contribution to those savings. He stood, hands spread in conciliation. "I'm sorry about that. I should have talked to you first, but what's done is done, and now we need to look forward." I stared at him. This man I'd loved for 7 years, wondering if I'd ever really known him. "What else haven't you told me?" His hesitation told me everything. "Tom, I've been day trading for a few months now." He couldn't meet my eyes. I had some losses, about $12,000 from my personal savings. The room seemed to tilt. "So you decided to gamble with our joint savings instead?" "It's not gambling, it's investing. There's a strategy. A strategy you didn't share with me, a strategy that's already cost you thousands." I moved to the window, watching rain turn our backyard into a muddy marsh. "I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "Come on, Ellie, we've been through worse, had we?" I couldn't remember anything that felt this fundamental, this betrayal of trust, this dismissal of my voice in our partnership. That night, I slept in the guest room, surrounded by the boxes of kitchen samples we'd collected. Tile swatches, cabinet door styles, paint chips in varying shades of blue. I'd imagined our mornings in that renovated kitchen. Sunlight streaming through new windows. Coffee brewing on the wolf range we'd splurged on in our plans. Lazy Sunday breakfasts at the island we'd designed together. I woke at 4 a.m. with clarity I hadn't felt in years. I opened my laptop and began to draft a business plan. For 3 hours, I poured everything into it. My design philosophy, market analysis, potential client base, startup costs. By dawn, I had the skeleton of Anderson Ellis Design, named for my maiden name, and the career I'd built at Anderson. When Tom woke and found me at the dining table, surrounded by spreadsheets and sketches, he looked confused. "What's all this?" He gestured at my laptop, hair tousled from sleep. "My future," I said simply. I'm starting my own design firm, he laughed, a short, dismissive sound that crystallized my resolve. With what capital? We're a little short on funds right now, remember? I have my personal savings, and I have contacts, experience, and a portfolio that can stand on its own. I closed my laptop. I've been helping Anderson's clients realize their visions for 7 years. It's time I built something for myself, something you can't risk on a whim. Ellie, be reasonable. Starting a business is a huge risk in itself. The difference is it's my risk to take, my decision, my future. I stood and gathered my papers. I'm going to look at office spaces today. Office spaces? You can't be serious, but I was. More serious than I'd ever been. Within a week, I'd rented a small office space in a converted warehouse in Georgetown, an up-and-coming neighborhood south of downtown Seattle. The space was raw, exposed brick, industrial windows, concrete floors, but it had potential, just like my business plan. I withdrew $30,000 from my personal savings, money I'd been setting aside since before Tom and I met. It wasn't enough for a comfortable cushion, but it was enough to start. I filed the LLC paperwork, built a website using templates and my own design skills, and reached out to the network I'd built over 7 years at Anderson. My resignation letter was brief but honest. I told Martin Anderson that I was grateful for everything I'd learned under his mentorship, but that it was time to build my own legacy. He was disappointed but not surprised. "You've outgrown us," he said during our exit interview. It was only a matter of time. What he didn't know was that time had been accelerated by Tom's betrayal, a catalyst that forced me to confront my own deferred dreams. The first month was terrifying. I sat in my empty office with a desk from IKEA, a laptop, and a phone that rarely rang. Each morning, I'd arrive at 7 a.m., make coffee in the tiny kitchenette, and work until sunset, reaching out to contacts, refining my business model, and questioning my sanity. Then Rachel Winters called, a former client from Anderson. She'd been referred to me by Martin himself, a kindness I hadn't expected. "I hear you're on your own now," she said. "We're redoing our entire first floor. Are you available for a consultation?" The Winters project became my first official client as Anderson Ellis Design. Their Tudor revival in Madison Park needed a complete overhaul: floors, lighting, spatial reconfiguration, and yes, a kitchen renovation that made my heart ache with memory. Standing in their dated kitchen, measuring the space and discussing their vision, I couldn't help but think of my own abandoned plans. Tom had called twice that week about the cryptocurrency investment, once to say it was showing promising returns, and later to admit it had dropped by 30%. Each time, I'd let the call go to voicemail. As I sketched preliminary designs for the Winters kitchen, a warm, functional space with a massive island and a farmhouse sink, I realized I was channeling elements from my own unrealized renovation, creating for others what I couldn't have for myself. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of something like hope. This was just the beginning. By the 3-month mark, Anderson Ellis Design had secured 5 residential projects and 1 commercial space, a boutique hotel lobby in Bellevue that came through a recommendation from Rachel Winters to her brother, a real estate developer. I'd hired an assistant, Zoe, a recent design school graduate with fresh ideas and infectious enthusiasm. The office was no longer empty. We'd added a conference table, design boards, material samples, and the beginnings of a decent portfolio. My phone rang regularly now, and my calendar filled with client meetings and site visits. I was exhausted but exhilarated. Each morning started at 5 a.m. with coffee and emails in my apartment before heading to the office. Each night ended after 9 p.m., reviewing proposals and drafting concepts until my eyes burned. I'd lost weight. My clothes hung loose on my frame. And my mother called regularly to remind me that success shouldn't cost you your health, Eleanor. But the alternative, going back to a life where my voice was diminished, my dreams secondary, wasn't an option. Tom and I had settled into an uneasy détente. He was still in our house. Technically, our mortgage was underwater since the housing market had dipped, making selling complicated. And I was renting a studio apartment near my office. We communicated through terse texts about practical matters, bills, mail, the leaky gutter that needed fixing. He'd apologized dozens of times, promised to change, suggested couples therapy. Part of me wanted to try again, but a stronger part recognized that what had broken between us couldn't be fixed with words alone. The cryptocurrency investment had collapsed entirely. The $47,000 had dwindled to less than $5,000, and Tom had been laid off from his job in tech sales. Each piece of news should have vindicated my anger, but instead, it just made me sad. Sad for what we'd lost, sad for the future we'd planned. Sad for the man who still couldn't see how his actions had fractured our foundation. One rainy October evening, as Seattle's darkness crept in earlier each day, I was working late at the office when the door opened. Tom stood there, soaked from the rain, looking thinner than I remembered. "Your apartment manager told me where to find you," he said, water dripping from his jacket onto the concrete floor. "You weren't answering my calls." I set down my pencil. "I've been busy." He looked around the office, taking in the design boards, the material samples, the evidence of my growing business. "This is impressive, Elle. Really impressive. Thank you." I gestured to a chair. "Why are you here?" He sat, running a hand through his wet hair. "I got a job offer in Chicago." A fresh start. Something cold settled in my stomach. Despite everything, despite the anger and hurt, I hadn't prepared for this, the finality of him leaving, of us truly ending. "When would you go?" 2 weeks. They need me to start November 1st. He leaned forward. "I want to sell the house. Split whatever we can get from it." I nodded. Professional mode engaging like armor. "I'll contact a realtor tomorrow. The market's down, but the neighborhood is still desirable. Ellie." He reached across the desk, not quite touching my hand. "I'm sorry. For everything. The money, the lies, the disrespect. You deserved better." The apology I'd wanted for months now felt hollow, overshadowed by his imminent departure. "I hope the job works out for you." "You could come with me." The suggestion hung in the air, ridiculous in its presumption. "Start fresh together. Your business is still new. You could establish it anywhere." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the man who had hurt me, but the man I had loved. Flawed, impulsive, but also capable of kindness and growth. For a moment I allowed myself to imagine it. A new city, a second chance, a rewritten story. Then I looked around at what I'd built from the ashes of his betrayal. "I can't, Tom. This isn't just a business to me. It's proof that I can trust myself. Even when I couldn't trust you. It's my independence, my voice." He nodded, understanding in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I figured, but I had to ask. After he left, I sat in the quiet of my office, listening to the rain against the windows, thinking about endings and beginnings. The next day, I called a realtor who specialized in our neighborhood. By the weekend, our house was on the market, priced to sell quickly. Walking through it for the final inspection, I paused in the kitchen, the space that had once represented our future. The chipped countertops, the cabinets that wouldn't close properly, the outdated appliances, all remained unchanged, a testament to plans derailed. "We could have renovated it," the realtor suggested, noting my focus. "Gotten a better price." "No," I said, running my hand along the counter's edge. "It's someone else's vision now." The house sold for less than we'd hoped, but enough to pay off the mortgage with a small amount left to split between us. Tom and I signed the papers separately. He'd already moved most of his things to storage in preparation for Chicago. The day before he left, we met for coffee at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between my office and our old neighborhood. The rain had given way to one of those rare, crisp autumn days that make Seattle magical, with clear skies revealing the Olympic Mountains to the west and the Cascades to the east. "I have something for you," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a check for $25,000. "Tom, what is this?" "Half of what I can salvage from my 401k. Early withdrawal penalties are brutal, but..." He shrugged. "It's not the full amount I took, but it's a start." I stared at the check, unsure how to feel. "You don't need to do this." "Yes, I do. It's not about the money, Ellie. It's about acknowledging what I did wrong." He looked different somehow, clearer, more present. "The therapist I've been seeing helped me understand that." "You're seeing a therapist?" "Twice a week since you left. Too little, too late, I know." He smiled sadly. "But Maybe not too late for me to become someone better, even if it's not with you. I folded the check and put it back in the envelope. Thank you. Not just for this, but for recognizing what happened between us. We parted with an awkward hug, 7 years of history compressed into a brief physical contact that felt both familiar and foreign. I watched him walk away, turning once to wave before disappearing around a corner. That evening, I used the check to make a down payment on a commercial space that had just come on the market. A storefront in Queen Anne with large windows and excellent foot traffic, it would become the official showroom for Anderson Ellis Design, a place where clients could see and touch materials, visualize concepts, and experience my design philosophy firsthand. As winter settled over Seattle, my business continued to grow. The Winters project was completed to rave reviews, leading to 3 referrals from their social circle. The boutique hotel lobby was featured in a regional design magazine, putting Anderson Ellis on the map for commercial projects. I hired 2 more employees, a project manager with construction experience, and another designer to help with the increased workload. The showroom opened in January, a bright spot during Seattle's darkest, rainiest month. On opening night, as clients, colleagues, and friends mingled among design displays and champagne flutes, Martin Anderson himself arrived, bringing a housewarming gift, a vintage drafting lamp that had once belonged to his father. "You've done something remarkable here," he said, surveying the space. "Built something meaningful out of a painful situation." I'd never told him the full story of my departure from my marriage or his firm. But Martin was perceptive. He'd been in the industry long enough to recognize determination born from adversity. "I had good teachers," I replied, thinking not just of him, but of Tom. Of how sometimes our greatest growth comes from our deepest wounds. As spring approached, bringing cherry blossoms and longer days to Seattle, I received an email from Tom. He'd settled in Chicago, was doing well at his new job, and continuing therapy. He'd met someone, a graphic designer named Mia, and was taking things slowly, applying the lessons he'd learned from our relationship. Attached to the email was a photo of a small kitchen in what I assumed was his new apartment. He'd renovated it himself, nothing fancy. But the cabinets were a deep blue, my favorite color. The countertops a warm butcher block, and the backsplash a simple white subway tile. It was, in many ways, a modest version of what we'd planned for our own home. "I finally did it," he wrote. "Not the dream kitchen we designed, but a space that reminds me daily of the importance of following through on promises, of building something real." I sat at my desk in the showroom, Chicago 5 hours ahead and already dark while Seattle's spring light lingered, and composed a reply. "It's beautiful, Tom. You built something that matters." Then I looked around at my own creation. A business born from betrayal, a future forged from disappointment, and added, "So did I." 1 year after Tom's "It's just money" text, Anderson Ellis Design was not just surviving, but thriving. We'd expanded to a team of 8, with specialized designers for residential, commercial, and hospitality projects. The showroom had become a destination for Seattle's design-conscious homeowners and business developers, and we'd been featured in 3 national publications. The $25,000 that Tom had returned had grown into something far more valuable than a kitchen renovation. It had become the foundation of a company now valued at over $500,000. Spring in Seattle brought a renewal that matched my personal renaissance. The city shook off its gray winter coat, revealing vibrant cherry blossoms, tulips, and the kind of clear sky days that made even the most hardened locals fall in love with the Pacific Northwest all over again. On one such perfect morning, I arrived at the office early to prepare for our most significant pitch yet, a proposal for redesigning the entire executive floor of Rainier Technologies, one of Seattle's fastest-growing tech companies. Landing this contract would push Anderson Ellis into a new echelon of commercial design firms. As I arranged material samples and finalized the presentation, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Check your email. Now." Curious, I opened my inbox to find a forwarded message from her, a listing for a house in my old neighborhood, just 3 blocks from the one Tom and I had shared. It was another craftsman, similar in age and character to our former home, but with one significant difference. The kitchen had been completely gutted, leaving a blank canvas for the new owner. "I know you're not looking," my mother wrote, "but sometimes the universe sends signs too clear to ignore." I stared at the listing photos, the beautiful bones of the house, The potential in that empty kitchen space, the south-facing windows that would fill the room with light all day. Something stirred in me, not just desire for the house itself, but recognition of how far I'd come. A year ago, such a project would have reminded me only of loss. Now, it represented possibility. After our successful pitch to Rainier Technologies, they signed the contract on the spot. Impressed by our portfolio and vision, I called the realtor listed on the house. By that evening, I'd toured the property and made an offer. The irony wasn't lost on me. Using the proceeds from my business, born from the ashes of a failed kitchen renovation, to buy a house whose kitchen needed complete renovation. Life's circles rarely close so neatly, but when they do, there's a certain poetry to it. My offer was accepted the next day. Within a month, I was a homeowner again, this time solely in my name, solely on my terms. The first night in my new house, I sat on the floor of the empty kitchen with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of good champagne. The space echoed with emptiness, but also with potential. I pulled out my sketchbook and began to draft, not just a kitchen, but a manifesto in blueprint form. This kitchen would be everything I'd dreamed of in the first one, but with new wisdom woven into its design. It would be beautiful, but practical. Impressive, but unpretentious. A space that honored my journey without being defined by it. As summer progressed, so did the renovation. Unlike clients who had to balance regular life with construction chaos, I threw myself into the project fully, using it as both a laboratory for new design ideas and a symbolic reconstruction of my life. I sourced salvaged fir beams from a decommissioned warehouse for open shelving, selected handmade ceramic tiles from a local artisan for the backsplash, and commissioned a concrete countertop embedded with recycled glass that caught the light like captured stars. Each element told part of my story: resilience, transformation, beauty from brokenness. The wolf range I'd once coveted still mated into the design, a splurge that felt like a promise kept to myself. But I balanced it with budget-conscious choices elsewhere, applying the business acumen I'd developed over the past year. My team at Anderson Ellis joked that I was my own worst client, exacting, detail-oriented, changing my mind about small elements as the space evolved. But they also recognized that this kitchen was more than a project. It was a reclamation. Tom emailed occasionally from Chicago. He'd been promoted at work, was still seeing Mia, and had joined a recreational basketball league. Normal life updates that no longer carried the weight of what might have been. We'd settled into a kind of friendship that acknowledged our history without being consumed by it. When I sent him photos of the kitchen renovation in progress, his response was simple: "You always had the vision. I'm glad you're finally bringing it to life." By late August, as Seattle enjoyed its most beautiful season, the kitchen was complete. It was everything I'd imagined and more. A space that combined functionality with soul, technical precision with artistic expression. The first meal I cooked there was for my team. A thank you dinner for their contributions, not just to the kitchen, but to the business that had made it possible. We gathered around the massive island, large enough for 8 people to work comfortably, as I'd always wanted, drinking wine and sharing stories as I prepared a multi-course meal that christened every appliance, every surface. Zoe, my first hire, who had now been promoted to lead designer for residential projects, raised her glass in a toast. To Ellie, who taught us all that sometimes the worst text message can lead to the best possible outcome. And later that night, after everyone had gone and I was cleaning up alone in my new kitchen, I found myself thinking about that text, "It's just money," and how those 4 words had altered the trajectory of my life. Tom had been wrong about the money, but right in an unexpected way. It was just money. What mattered more was what I did after losing it. The business continued to flourish through fall and winter. We landed 2 more major commercial contracts, expanded our residential client base, and even opened a small satellite office in Portland to handle projects in Oregon. My role evolved from hands-on designer to creative director and business owner, requiring a mindset shift that sometimes felt uncomfortable, but ultimately pushed me to grow in new directions. In December, almost 18 months after that fateful text, I received a holiday card from Tom with Chicago's snowy skyline on the front. Inside was a brief note and a small newspaper clipping. He and Mia had gotten engaged. The announcement included a photo of them, smiling in front of what appeared to be her design studio. "She owns her business too," Tom wrote. "I've learned to respect that kind of passion and independence. Thank you for teaching me what that looks like." I pinned the card to the bulletin board in my kitchen, not out of lingering attachment, but as a reminder of how completely lives can transform, how people can grow, how endings often contain beginnings if we're brave enough to look for them. That Christmas, I hosted my family in my new home for the first time. My parents, my sister and her husband, my 2 young nephews, all gathered in the kitchen that had become the heart of my house, just as I'd always intended. We baked cookies, prepared an elaborate Christmas Eve dinner, and drank mulled wine as snow, a rare occurrence in Seattle, drifted past the windows. My mother found me alone there late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed. I was wiping down the counters, putting away the last of the dishes, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of a space well used. "You know what I see when I look at this kitchen?" she asked, running her hand along the edge of the concrete countertop. "What's that?" "Not just a beautiful design, but a blueprint for how to rebuild after loss." She smiled, the wisdom of her 68 years evident in her eyes. "You could have spent these months bitter about what happened with Tom. Instead, you built all this." She gestured not just at the kitchen, but at the life it represented. The business cards on the refrigerator with my company logo, the design awards displayed on the open shelving, the calendar on the wall filled with client meetings and project deadlines. "It wasn't easy," I admitted. "The best things never are." She kissed my cheek. "I'm proud of you, Eleanor." As the new year approached, I found myself reflecting on the strange, painful, beautiful journey that had brought me here. The text that had broken my heart had also broken open my life, creating space for something I might never have built otherwise. Anderson Ellis Design ended its second year with a portfolio of over 30 completed projects, a team of 12 talented professionals, and a reputation for innovative work that honored both aesthetics and authenticity. My renovated kitchen had been featured in a national design magazine, a full-circle moment that felt like the universe winking at me. On New Year's Eve, I hosted a small gathering of close friends, mostly new ones I'd made through the business, people who knew me only as the confident founder of a successful design firm, not as the woman whose husband had emptied their joint account on a cryptocurrency gamble. At midnight, as fireworks exploded over Elliott Bay and the Space Needle glowed against the night sky, I stepped away from the celebration to send a text to Tom. "Happy New Year. Thank you for the unexpected gift of starting over." His reply came minutes later. "The best designs often come from the biggest demolitions. Your company is proof of that." Standing in my kitchen, my vision, my creation, my triumph, I smiled at the truth in his words. Sometimes it takes complete demolition to build something truly extraordinary. Sometimes it's just money is the beginning of a much richer story. The kitchen renovation fund Tom had emptied had ultimately financed a far more valuable reconstruction of my career, my confidence, and my understanding of what I was capable of building on my own. It wasn't the future we had planned, but it was a future that fit me perfectly, like a house designed specifically for its owner. In design, we talk about transformation, about taking spaces from what they are to what they could be. My journey had been the ultimate before and after project, with results more dramatic and satisfying than any renovation. As my guests laughed and celebrated around me, I ran my hand along the cool surface of my kitchen island, solid, beautiful, mine, and silently thanked the text message that had changed everything. It was, after all, just money. What I'd built in its place was priceless,